Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Today is the 1st of December, and a very important event occurred at the Supreme Court, and that is the justices heard an argument related to a Mississippi law that is going to restrict or possibly overturn Roe v. Wade. The idea is about abortion, okay, and taking away the rights of women to have an abortion. Now, I understand that many people, the Republicans, are standing up and declaring that they're defending the rights of a fetus, the baby, to life, but without regard to the right of the mother to have her life, and to have. So the definition, you could say, is one of them is the right to breathe, and the other one is the right to create the life that she's always wanted, to fulfill her purpose in life. The definition of life is very different from these two perspectives. So I wanted to address this, let's say, a fear that there's going to be, that women are going to lose our rights to be able to have, let's say, choice over our own bodies, whatever happens to our bodies. The events that are happening on a sociological basis, I also want to give you an opportunity to understand how to keep your rights, okay, and how to overturn the attempt to overturn Roe v. Wade, how it can play out on a different basis instead of losing our rights. Okay, when people are denied their rights, that is basically it's a let's say a form of, it's a power game that people are playing, that is basically a game of a sense of judgment. It's people who have been denied their rights are people who've been dragged into a genocide are denied their rights. So I want to demonstrate to you this idea about this is genocide and this is liberty. This is lose your rights. So when we're talking about liberty, is the principle that creates a sense of balance again, brings it to the straight and narrow idea. And so liberty is, let's say, universal law is based on, God's law is based on these 7 principles. People who've been dragged into a genocide have lost their rights. So what I wanted to do today is look at what happens with an act of revenge, and how it reaches the point here where people are losing their rights. For a long time now in the United States, we've been listening to the news, and we've been hearing the idea of fake news, and this, how many lies have been told, and the fact checkers, and Donald Trump has been caught in a lot of lies that he's told, and we have the media that is putting a spin on the news, and it's something that we've been hearing all the time, over and over again for the last 5 years or so, and more. When somebody lies, the truth doesn't overcome the lie. It just reaches the point where nobody knows who to trust. So we're reaching the point where people don't trust anybody else. But at the same time, there is let's say an unusual idea about trust that's coming out, and that is when people are trusting the wrong people. All right. So I'm going to go kind of off here for a little bit and not talk so much about abortion, but about rights and how we can get them back. I'm sure this is something that people would be willing to argue with me about, but it was the Iraq War that triggered this whole schism that's been going on. The power games that our government has played, or people in general, everybody plays the game, so I'm not picking out our government in particular because every government plays the games. We're all people, and people play power games. They're known as the 7 deadly sins. But when you bring together, and the reason they're called 7 deadly sins is because there's 7 of them then, and people always die when somebody plays the games. It reaches the game of pride leads to wars, and the game of envy leads to genocides. The game of greed leads to massacres, and the game of lust leads to, let's say, slavery, human rights violations, and then the game of anger leads to acts of terrorism. Okay, so, and I've talked about this before. What my purpose is when to talk about how to keep our rights is that we're in a situation here now where if we compare what's happening on the level, the same games occur on every level. So if we compare it to what's happening like in a family, we can understand what's happening within our government. Okay, our country is like a family. When somebody stands on the principles, this time period is known as Armageddon. When somebody stands on the principles, then that affects the security and support of somebody else, and that person goes down in the power games. So it's like in the Bible it says when 2 people are sitting in a field, one is taken and the other is left behind. So let's say that when somebody stands on principles, that person is going up, but then that affects somebody else and that person goes down into the games. The games, it's like this person is standing on principles, that person will gain in power, where the person who goes down into the games fears loss of power, so plays compensatory games that are oppressive to other people. So let's say we have, and I've used this before, we have a marriage, and you have one of the spouses, let's say the husband, stands on the principles that he's working late at night, and his wife may fear that he's having an affair, so she goes down into the games. And then that affects the children, and then that brings in other people, the extended family and neighbors and other people, maybe even somebody that you're sitting next to, in a restaurant or something, and you're really worried, and they said, can I help? The problem with that is where this is going right now in the United States, is that when people stand on the principles, I'm going to tell you, I sent my letter to the Supreme Court, and standing on those 7 principles of equality, liberty, freedom, compassion, abundance, capacity, and tolerance. These are what create a sense of balance, but when standing on these principles, that will cause people to go down into the games because they're dependent on the games for their security and their support. So just the act of writing a letter to the Supreme Court will cause people to go down into the games. If you are an oncologist, for example, it would be a real moral problem when somebody comes up with a cure for cancer. It might be. Some people might say, well, it was time for this to come out, and I'm glad. And other people will say, what am I going to do? I have all these mortgages, and I bought just all these expensive things that I'm working on. So you see, it's like a choice always that people have. So the thing of it is, what will happen at that point in time is the games are bad and not the people. But then what happens is the power games can spiral down to the point with revenge. And that is when it starts getting very serious. I'm going to just tell you that when the one person will play the game of pride, wage war, to get respect. This one is basically lacking capacity, denying their own capacity. So basically, they put somebody on a pedestal. Then this one and these two games here, lust is what leads to slavery. Fear of intimacy. This one is massacre, is the game of greed, and this one is anger, and that leads to terrorism. So so when we talk about revenge, we're talking about 5 people or groups of people coming together, and it's an act of revenge where they believe that by getting revenge, they're going to get. This person either wants a combination of a voice and abundance. This person wants the idea of capacity and a voice. This one wants a combination of intimacy and capacity. This one, it wants respect and capacity and a voice. Okay, it all goes that way, but there's nobody there on the other side to make it happen. Now, the reason I'm talking about this now is something when this starts to happen. Let's say in the family, the wife goes to the neighbor or an extended family, and that person functions for his or her own interests. Why would a neighbor care about what's happening in the family? That person can use it to their own, that conflict to their own advantage, to control or to manipulate or whatever in the family. Now, I'm going to use the possibility of, let's say you have the Republicans, the Democrats and the Republicans, and then you have Donald Trump and the Russia investigation, for example, and his connection with Russia. He's like 180 degrees from where he thinks he is. He has relied on Russian intelligence rather than U.S. intelligence. I'm talking about the Steele dossier and all the things that go along with that. A hostile takeover, let's say, of the United States is possible. So what we're doing right now is we're looking at this idea of conflict that is coming from this, like a hostile divorce when it gets revenge and other people are coming in. The very hard part is when people are blocked from having any kind of action. So let's say that you have somebody like I'm going to use Saddam Hussein in the Iraq War, because, as I said, the Iraq War triggered this first series of ripples that have gone out. And then the second one was when Barack Obama was in office and he wasn't able to overcome what happened with the Republicans. And he didn't necessarily do everything perfectly either. So, but I'm not going to judge. And then Donald Trump is this third time around. And now what's happening is we are entering into actual conflict. The first time was the Iraq War, so that was conflict too. But now what we're doing is we're talking about how the United States is involved, where it's fighting here by denying the rights to the Iraqi people under universal law. We are losing our rights now. Okay, because of the power games, of the games of revenge. These are all power games that the ripples of power games that come out, including famine and terrorism and poverty and slavery and massacres and genocide and war. So the United States has entered into this idea of these conflicts. To get your unalienable rights back, let's say what's happening now is the Republican Party doesn't want to let go of its power, but the Republican Party, combined with the people, you have the husband, but then you have the power base where it's the wife and the people who function for their own interests, the neighbors or the extended family, the mother-in-law maybe, or that's a very strong structure there. And then the kids are kind of halfway between. Then what happens is that the structure will build up and try to drive the husband out of the crisis. The thing is, though, is that the structure where that happens, by doing that, what happens is that the act of revenge backlashes on the people who are playing the games. So the husband is driven out, and he has to figure out how to deal with the new situation, but so does the wife, and this structure becomes the point where driving the husband out and making sure that, let's say, the lies, the illusion that is happening, the lies that have happened, you can say that that's the big part, is that nobody knows who to trust. And the first question that you can ask somebody is related to a war. Who do you trust? Should the wife trust the husband? Should the wife trust the neighbor or the extended family, the mother-in-law? Should the wife, what happens is, if the mother-in-law or the friends say, well, he was no good at all without any kind of proof, how does the person defend himself or herself? And then it's kind of like, okay, well, that person can't defend himself, so then it becomes more and more of like digging the hole deeper and deeper. So if a letter to the Supreme Court has gone out, and the letter you can find on the website, if the letter to the Supreme Court has gone out and it basically introduces God's law back into, with all these, based on these 7 principles that counter the power, the 7 deadly sins, that God is stronger than sin. Okay, sin means coming from a sense of lack, and so it creates a sense of abundance, and it allows everybody to get their life again. Then, by creating this power structure, might seem to be like a really good idea, and getting rid of the man, the husband, might seem like a really good idea, but then things get very difficult for everybody. The children go into crisis, and the mother goes into crisis, and the mother-in-law is in crisis, and the person who is basically driven out is in crisis because trying to get his or her family back again. Therefore, basically, this is what happens. So the thing is, the solution is, first of all, our conflict resolution brochures help get the family back together again, but these principles of universal law create a sense of balance again. And then the World Peace marketing strategy allows everybody to get their life, not necessarily for the family to come back together again, because maybe it was a romantic relationship where nobody has the same goals to begin with. And basically each group of these people can get their life just by following this. The husband can follow the top row because he's standing on principles, and then as he is being squeezed, he can come and be part of this idea of world peace and the plan for the international government, which may seem like, well, we don't want that, but basically doing what's in everyone's best interest is the solution here, and coming up with an idea, a plan that benefits everyone. That allows the sense of balance to come in too, because it's based on universal law. Then let's say the wife, instead of relying on her husband or somebody else for her financial support, she needs to learn to be responsible for her own financial support. And we have classes on how to do that. It's based on, if the woman is a stay-at-home mom because she's let's say a Christian, then basically the idea of Proverbs 31 is a misunderstanding, where the wife is the responsible for her own business, and then the husband, if he leaves in with somebody else, it's kind of like, if she has her business and he's supporting it, then when he leaves, it's like, what difference does it make? I need to find somebody who will work with me on this idea. If he's not interested, then he can go off and create the life he wants too, and it's not a problem, because she's already responsible for her own financial support. Then the children this is the relationship with a parent, basically, who will help them get their life, and they'll help each other get their life. And then the lower one is the fourth row is for the people who function for their own interests. And basically let's say this is Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren up here, all principals all the time. And when they do that, it really makes the Republicans upset. And so the Republicans are here, and then the family in here. But the problem with it is that now we're talking about Roe v. Wade again, and the idea of how can that be overturned? Well, what would happen if the schism occurs within the party too, and then you have women within the party who basically the party is schisming too, and then it comes down to the family level, and then right down to the individual level. Eventually, what will happen is all of these conflicts come down to the individual level, and basically that's when you have to figure out how to create the life you want. And that is when you can come in and be part of the international government and be part of the information that we have. My books that I've channeled are channeled messages from God on how to overcome any crisis. They're basically, they help you go from, if you have gone along thinking that you're getting your life, you hit the point of the crisis and you're in the abyss, then it helps you figure out how to get out of the abyss and get your life back again. If you go through a situation like this, and everybody has the right to create the life they want. And that's what I've been preparing for all of these years since the early 90s when I started the prayer circle. The information that we have is how to create the life you want. Now, if you look at me and you say, well, how can she be creating the life she wants? I'm sitting in my warehouse, and I've been in my own crisis. I was a dental hygienist and got squeezed out of my job, and then I had to build myself back up again using the information that's in my books. And then so I had to prove that it works. This is my e-commerce warehouse that I've taken and I put it together. I've been basically homeless for a long time and had to, instead of getting another job, I was challenged with the idea that I could take the information that I channeled and apply it in my own life and then function on a higher level. So based on my talents and gifts as a channel, as a psychic, as a seer and a healer, basically I kind of can do lots of different things. Basically, I have been applying this information, and this is how I'm getting out of my crisis, by applying this information in my own life. This is something that if I can do it, then just about anybody can do it too. And that's where we come now. Let's say I understand all of this because I've lived it for the last 20 years. I was squeezed out of my job and I became homeless, and now I had to go from the point where I was in crisis and apply this information, which is very difficult to do when you're by yourself and trying to figure out how to make all this stuff happen, and being harassed by people because people have been getting revenge on me too. And let's say I was driven out of my own family situation. I started a plan for world peace, and people were saying, we don't want to be part of that. And then other people came in and put blocks up for that to happen, for them to come back and be part of this. So I had to keep moving forward. The next step is as I work on this idea of this body of knowledge Then the next person to come in is the person who basically is working on the next body of knowledge, and that is associated with what that's the constitutional amendment idea. The nonprofit organization that I started, so I have a business, a publishing business, and I have a nonprofit organization, and right now members in 87 countries, and people are talking about the plan for world peace. So it is possible for anybody, even a homeless person, to do remarkable things, and I'm no different than anybody else, and you can do all of this too. You can function from within your own capacity, and then see, if you are judging other people based on this idea of revenge, then if you play the game of envy, which starts genocides and taking away other people's rights, which is basically kind of what's happening at the Supreme Court right now, then you're denying your own capacity. So to let go of this game that many people play, you have to function from your own capacity. You have to figure out what that capacity is. So that's where all of this is starting, is instead of having people tell you, take away your rights, basically you understand that like in Iraq, if we took away somebody's rights, then they lose their rights, and then they go down into the abyss. If the conservative justices on the Supreme Court are in the process now of taking away people's rights, women's rights to choose to live their life. That's an unalienable right that we're given by our Creator. To be able to create the life we want is our purpose in life. And that sounds more like Oprah Winfrey and all the things that she has talked about over the years, is living your life and creating the life that you've always wanted, and that kind of information, that kind of support that somebody is giving you to do that. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight, is if you find yourself being blocked by somebody who functions for their own interest, this idea of the fourth row people, those are people who are 180 degrees from where they think they are. This information right here is, and it's on the website, all this information, this is on the website too. Basically, if you are concerned about this, nobody can prevent you from getting your life. When you stand on principles, though, you have to understand that people will object to what you're doing, but you just keep on going forward, because eventually what happens is that they hit the point where it stops working, and then they have to figure out how to get out of their crisis. The power games, nobody can get their life by creating power games. It's all coming from a sense of lack, so you keep on reinstating the lack. So that's all I wanted to say today, is continue to walk forward to create the life you've always wanted, doing what's in everyone's best interest. Stand on these principles and understand that if somebody is interfering in your life, that they're just fighting the universe and they're not going to win. The classes that we have are the Getting Out of the Abyss classes, and I'm going to be introducing these soon. Right now, the only people that I can really work with are the people in the independent members of the organization. I have to bring in the professional publishing team before that happens, and so that, because my books are amateur quality books, I'm not a graphic artist. This is not something that a graphic artist would. This is something, it's totally amateur. And so I do the best I can, but I need to turn it over to somebody else who can do it better than I am. I have been working on my website for almost a month now, trying to get up and going, and it looks okay, but I'm an amateur at just about everything. I need to turn things over to other people and let them function on a higher level too, because they can do a better job than I can. That's what I like, is the idea of having people too who can come and help me. But I don't know who I can trust right now because everybody has been just making things difficult for everybody. So I ask that you like, share, and subscribe. If you're worried about Roe v. Wade, if you're worried about the decision if the Supreme Court takes away your right to have an abortion, basically the solution is to just understand that God never said you needed to be pregnant, and you can just let it go. Wish. If you want to let it go, God is not, you can have a spontaneous abortion and just let it go. You don't have to have an abortion. You don't have to have the Supreme Court justices interfering in your life. Just go, let it go. You'll have, within a short period of time, the fetus will just be expelled out of your body. If you want to keep the baby and you're bleeding, you can do the same things, because that's happened to me. I had a problem and the bleeding stopped, and my daughter is in her 20s now. So, and she's a real wonderful young lady. So I ask that you like, share, and subscribe, but most of all share, because this information is important. If you are concerned, if you've been driven out, you can still get your life, because all this information that we have is going to be available soon, and we'll be demonstrating it to everybody. So thank you.